All right, Larry Krueger with a 49er practice recap. Day 2 in Las Vegas with the Raiders. Day 13 overall of 49er practices. And, of course, we're brought to you by Pig in a Pickle, the best barbecue in Northern California. Check them out in Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. or until they run out. Pig in a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. All right, Niners and Raiders went today in Vegas. Couple things before practice. Kyle Shanahan said yesterday that Kyle Juszczyk could potentially be the Niner punt returner. He's one of their best punt returners. We also saw Robert Beal back in practice today. He had been sitting out injured. The Niners also made a transaction today, signing former Chiefs second-round defensive lineman Breeland Speaks. Speaks was originally drafted by the Chiefs in the second round of the 2018 draft. He'd been playing in the USFL. He attended the University of Mississippi. Niners need DN depth. That's the bottom line. Bosa's not signed. The other guys are kind of unsure, and they just don't know what they have there. So they signed Breeland Speaks, who was the XFL sack leader, to a one-year deal. And in a corresponding move, they placed Anthony Averett, the corner they just signed out of Alabama. He goes on the injured reserve, so his year is done. As far as the one-on-ones, the Niner O-line against the Raider D-line, according to the reports that I'm reading today, Max Crosby had a real good rep against Colton McKivitz and beat him with an inside spin move. Jordan Willis, who's now a Raider, used to be a Niner, beat Matt Pryor in the one-on-ones. But then Leroy Watson came back and got revenge against Jordan Willis by beating him. Jason Poe and Joey Fisher supposedly held up well in the one-on-ones. And one of the highlights of the one-on-ones, according to what I'm reading on Twitter, is that Ilm Manning had a pile-driving rep against the Raiders' George Tarlas. The 49er running backs and tight ends did a really nice job in the one-on-ones against the Raider linebackers and safeties. Christian McCaffrey, I guess, burned Robert Spillane. Then Kyle Juszczyk beat Divine Diablo on an out pattern. So in the 7-on-7s, Purdy, Darnold, and Lance all threw interceptions against the Raiders' defense in the 7-on-7 drills. So that's a little bit of the rundown there. And, of course, then from there, there was more action after that. Davante Adams went down on the field with a vicious hit over the middle on the first play of the full team scrimmage. First play, Davante Adams apparently sustained a lower left leg injury and then limped off after a collision with Oren Burks, who broke up a pass with Charvarius Ward in coverage. So you had Burks and Ward around the ball, and it sounds like maybe Ward or Burks wound up hitting Adams, and Adams was shaken up. Also, Spencer Burford had a nice one-on-one rep against the Raiders' Neil Farrell Jr., who tried to spin move against him, but Burford pancaked him coming out of it. Jeff Garcia, by the way, weighed in this week on the quarterback competition. We'll get into that later on. He basically says that Brock Purdy is the guy. Tay Martin is continuing to have a nice camp. He made the catch of the day, according to some. He beat the Raiders' defensive back in the back of the end zone on a Trey Lance fade pattern. If there's one thing that we've seen consistently is that Lance and Tay Martin have a great rapport and put together some reps in the offseason, and it sounds like it's carried over into camp. Yesterday's theme carried over to today. Both Purdy and Garoppolo were sharp to open the 11-on-11s. Jacoby Myers had a big chunk yardage gainer for the Raiders. Ayuk, Debo, and McCaffrey all got first downs early on for the Niners. There was a mini skirmish in the practice today between Marcus Epps and Brandon Ayuk. Jimmy Garoppolo, by the way, yesterday admitted that the 2021 season after the Niners drafted Trey Lance was real awkward in an article that he did with the Chronicle's Mike Silver. We saw in this practice, I guess, that Jimmy Garoppolo, I didn't see it, but Jimmy Garoppolo hit the former Niner, DeAndre Carter, who was a former Sac State guy, for a touchdown to cap the first red zone period. And it was an out pattern that beat Demetrius Flanagan fouls. Different reports as far as Brock Purdy. He threw interceptions today. He threw an interception to Marcus Peters, who I guess hurled the ball high into the air in celebration. And then he threw a second interception of practice. This one went to Robert Spillane, the Raiders linebacker. The Niners offense sounds like it struggled against the Raiders defense, which is something you really don't want to hear because the Raider defense is not that great. But the Raiders, The Raiders had six interceptions today against the 49ers, three of them off Brock Purdy, including two from linebacker Robert Spillane. Just to keep this in mind, though, Derek Carr last year in training camp did not throw one interception. In the regular season, he led the NFL in interceptions. So factor that in. But just overall, it sounds like a real sloppy day for the 49ers to wrap up the joint session out there in Las Vegas. Purdy finished strong with a touchdown run to cap a long drive, and then that sparked another skirmish. It wasn't a big brawl, but definitely a shoving match. But the Niner quarterbacks combined for 6 picks against the Raiders in 7-on-7 and 11-on-11s. Purdy threw 2 in the 11-on-11s, and all 3 of the Niner quarterbacks, Darnold, Lance, and Purdy, all threw interceptions in the 7-on-7s. Purdy's pick in the 7-on-7s supposedly bounced off of Deebo Samuel. The Niners' defense also, according to reports, was not overpowering as Garoppolo and the Raiders enjoyed some efficient drives against the Niner number 1 defense. Tomorrow there'll be a walkthrough. Then the Niner preseason game with the Raiders is Sunday at 1 o'clock. And, we got a lot of Brock Purdy today and hardly anything from Lance and Darnold. So expect Lance and Darnold to go heavy on Sunday in the actual game itself. There was, I guess, some rough stuff in the practice. The Niner wideouts had been joined with Trevon Moehrig, the Raiders safety, all throughout the practice. And then Moehrig and Deebo had to be pulled apart following the Brock Purdy touchdown run. The Niners' first-team offense started and finished with some quality drives. The struggles and Brock Purdy's 2 interceptions came over the middle of a very long practice, according to reports. Darnold saw the bulk of quarterback 2 work today. Lance, definitely played more. Lance played more yesterday. Darnold played more today. Darnold did make a few nice throws to Willie Snead, Daz Newsome, and Brandon Ayuk. As far as how it all worked out, Brock Purdy in 11-on-11s, all with the first team at 39 total reps and was 15 of 26. Trey Lance had 5 11-on-11 reps and was 1 of 2. And then, of course, Sam Darnold had a total of 4 reps in 11-on-11 and went 3 for 3 passing. Brandon Allen had no reps in 11-on-11. So overall, the numbers for Brock Purdy today, it sounds like 16 of 28, a touchdown run, 2 interceptions in the 11-on-11. Sam Darnold went 3 for 3 in the 11-on-11s. Trey Lance 1 for 2. So, as far as what can you take out of these practices, I think you can take a lot in that, what do they look like? But just looking at the stats, it's very difficult. I didn't get a chance to go to Vegas, so I have a hard time sitting there and evaluating and contextualizing for you these interceptions. But once again, I don't view the interceptions as a nightmarish situation. To me, it's more about, testing your boundaries in practice, and who knows? I wasn't there for all of them, so I can't say exactly how these balls are being thrown. I have seen all of training camp up to this point, and what I see is Brock Purdy looking very much like Brock Purdy from a year ago. Sam Darnold looking very unsure of himself from series to series, and Trey Lance looking really good throwing the ball down the field and not as good on the short throws. But it sounds like Purdy got all the reps today, and so he's not going to get any reps on Sunday, and the game will be there to determine what Trey Lance and Sam Darnold look like against the Raiders. So interesting couple days in Vegas for sure for the Niners, and now we look ahead to Sunday at 1 o'clock for preseason game number 1, and it should be a pivotal game in the careers of Trey Lance and Sam Darnold. I'm also eager to see the Niner running backs, the Niner linebackers, the Niner pass rush up front, the Niner O-line. How many of the starters play? I doubt a lot of them play, but it'll be interesting to see how many of them go Sunday, the first of 3 preseason games. All right, thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krug Show. There's your instant reaction from training camp practice number 13 today in Las Vegas. And thanks to all of you guys for supporting the Krug Show on YouTube.